The definition of good and evil. Darkness, in whatever form, may be clearly defined as those things that give primary power to egotism, materialism, and the attendant harms that follow to others and to us. Essentially, the dark is anything hindering spiritual evolution. In other words, hindering love. Good arises from the consciousness of love and unity. Evil is rooted in selfishness and the excessive sense of separation. Good may be defined as loving and wise, while bad is selfish and foolish. A certain degree of self-interest is a natural and normal human characteristic, but when it becomes extreme and harms others, then it corresponds to evil. It is our separation from the soul or inner divinity that makes evil possible. Betrayal of the good is the result of the ignorance of who we are as spiritual beings. We live in the world in a physical body with the illusion that our self or ego is entirely separate from others. It is this sense of separation that is the root of evil. The soul or spiritual self knows the good. It is the higher self, the real you, that distinguishes between good and evil. Ultimately, the meaning of right and wrong is conferred upon us by our own spiritual consciousness, that is, by the divinity within. Or more exactly, in some measure according to the degree of our spiritual awakening. Awakening brings light, but we cannot have light without darkness or comprehend the nature of light without the existence of darkness. In our illuminated freedom, we are godlike. In our misuse of it, we fall into evil. Some sense of right and wrong is derived from our culture, from family, group, nation, religion, philosophy, and so on. Some of this is relatively good, and some is wrong, or to some degree wrong. A key part of our growth in life is learning to discern the difference between what is truly right versus the things handed down to us from outside, some of which is off the mark. Good and evil are not a simple binary. Rather, there are countless degrees that exist between these two opposites. There are many degrees of wrong and many shades of good. Ordinary language is not well adapted to express this, so we have only rough categories such as wrong, poor, good, better, best, etc. Only a lesser number of thoughts and acts deserve the radical label of evil or truly good. There is also relative good, which may be defined as that which is the correct next step forward for a given person. For another person with different needs, it might be a step backward. But all such relative or individual good takes place within the evolutionary stream of motion toward the ultimate good and derives its measure of virtue from that. From deity comes a universe peopled with beings to whom is imparted a measure of free will. Evil arises as a necessary byproduct of freedom of choice. God creates freedom, and from that arises the possibility of evil. God does not create evil, but allows it. Imagine a hypothetical God that created a world without freedom, without the possibility of evil. Such a world would be static, determined, and robotic. Actually, a hell of a world that no one would want to be part of. When something other than God is brought into manifestation, which is to say the objective universe, that means the existence of things and beings that are less than God, less than the absolute good. This means a world of matter, relativity, duality, freedom and choice, and so the possibility of evil. The gift of that freedom defines what it means to be human. If God created a universe peopled with beings that had no freedom, no choice, no possibility of good or evil, it would be a universe of wind-up toys whose every move was mechanical and predetermined. It would be a world in which there are no heroic actions, because there would be no heroes and no entities on the dark side to oppose them. As Henry Van Dyke expressed it, a world in which matter never got out of place, and iron had no flaws and wood no crack, in which gardens had no weeds and food grew ready cooked, and things never went wrong, would be a much easier place to live in. But for purposes of training and development, it would be worth nothing at all. It is the resistance that puts us on our mettle. It is the conquest of the reluctant stuff that educates the worker. I wish you enough difficulties to keep you well and make you strong and skillful.